So if you read the email invitation to this session, you heard about Paul and Mike and their endeavors to start a nonprofit organization. Whatever happened to Paul and Mike? Well, they both happened to be on the call today. So hello and welcome to them. And they ended up being founding board members of Humanitarian Social Innovations, and they went on to be successful entrepreneurs at Soltech Solutions, selling premium LED grow lights and working out of the Pi building right here in the Lehigh Valley. Um, so why do we go to work every day at Humanitarian Social Innovations? Well, we believe that people are generally good and they want to do good things. And we found that people have ideas, want to do good things for their community, but the barriers to entry in the nonprofit world are high. It's expensive, it's complicated, and it thrills us to lower those barriers in access to the nonprofit world for people who maybe don't have the means, financial or otherwise, to start and run a nonprofit organization. Uh, we we realize and we recognize that a nonprofit is a corporation, just like General Motors. The differences in how the revenue comes in, the taxability of the revenue, and the mandate to the board of directors are significant. However, in all other aspects, you're running a corporation when you're running a nonprofit, and not everybody who's inspired to do good work for other human beings has the toolkit necessary to run a nonprofit corporation. We also get really jazzed at coming to work every day and finding new economies of scale, new strategic partnerships, and creative collaborations for our programs. This is our vision. I think it's consistent with our inspiration. And keep in mind that last sentence: we exist to serve nonprofit organizations and the social entrepreneur, because that really connects to one of our core values that you'll probably see a thread throughout the presentation this morning. In founding this organization, I wanted to embed my own personal values into the organization. Specifically, servant leadership is a core personal value and now a corporate value that was developed and refined over some years in military leadership, some years in educational leadership, some years in leading a family. And the bottom line is, the more people you lead, the more people you serve. And our whole business model is set up so that we can focus on serving others and still do well as a business. And that really excites me because that's a core value. I was introduced to social entrepreneurship early in my MBA with Dr. Andrew Ward, and really identified with social entrepreneurship. And we innovated and brought Humanitarian Social Innovations to the Lehigh Valley as a fiscal sponsorship organization. Most population centers have an organization like ours, but the Lehigh Valley did not. So we created an organization that spoke to the needs of the Lehigh Valley, and we're determined to be a good partner in the Lehigh Valley to the nonprofit sector. We also innovate in program development and an application of our model to support existing 501c3 organizations. So what do we actually do? Well, it's really not too sexy or attractive. We sit behind computers all day, but fiscal sponsorship is our primary service. We practice two models of fiscal sponsorship, models A and C, and they are the most common models practiced nationally among fiscal sponsors. Model A is a comprehensive model where we're bringing the program into our own organization inside our corporate structure. Its mission supports our mission, and then we either conduct or support all of the processes of that organization. The best analogy for the funding model here is if an animal welfare organization would decide to open a pet food pantry as a new program. The funders would say, here's some money for your pet food pantry. The animal welfare organization would receive that money and apply it to that particular program. And that's exactly what we're doing here with our programs. The benefit here to the community is that we're using our own overhead and our own corporate structure to provide that back office for all of these little programs. So you don't have all this duplicative activities in these little organizations. The other model that we practice is Model C, which is a re-granting model. We receive only the tax exempt funds for a program that is its own standalone entity. We hold those funds until they're needed by the program, and then the program is accountable for the destination of the funds, the ultimate destination of the funds, and substantiation of those expenditures. So this is different from a pass-through. This is not a pass-through. And we can talk about that a little bit more in the Q&A, but this is definitely not a pass-through model. Okay. There we go. All right. Capacity building is another thing that we do. It's mystery nonprofit code words for all the systems of a nonprofit organization that enable it to conduct its mission. We've been doing this internally for our own programs and including that in the fiscal sponsorship fee. And we're developing an external capacity building plan that would be available to all nonprofit organizations. And then finally, when COVID hit, we pivoted from that, and we first of all wanted to see how we could apply our business model to assist local nonprofit organizations that may be in distress from COVID. Now, I do have a PDF to share with you, but I think I might have to stop sharing my screen to do that. Let me do that. You know what? I'll do that at the end after the when the question and answer is. But we have five ways that we changed our model of fiscal sponsorship. We applied our model of fiscal sponsorship to address potential distresses that nonprofits might be experiencing as a result of COVID. Now, we know that nonprofits have their stresses regularly, and that COVID really exacerbated that for them. So that was one thing we did. And then the second thing was to package up the services that we were already conducting for our own programs and make those available a la carte for nonprofits to purchase from us. For example, financial management, payroll support, grant support, fundraising support, compliance, website support through a partnership with TTLG Design, Brian McStackey, social media support. Those are some things that an organization could purchase from us a la carte. So we piloted that starting in October internally with our own programs, and starting in January, we started to pilot that with existing 501c3 programs. So servant leadership is part of our organization. We believe in serving the entrepreneur and serving the sector. When they're doing well, we are doing well. And that is consistent with our values as an organization and the personal values that I hoped to embed into the organization with our founding board from the very beginning. So that concludes my presentation, but I would be happy to answer questions at this point.
Linda, where do you get your funding to help these nonprofits?
So our revenue model is that we reserve 10% of the funds that we manage for the programs, and then we can run our back office on a 10%, basically a 10% overhead, if you're familiar with the nonprofit world, but we can run all of our operations off of that. Of course, the a la carte services would be, those are a monthly, I was going to share that with you. Those are a monthly subscription.
Just, if you don't mind, I just want to jump in as a board member. As with any entrepreneur, you pour your heart and soul into an organization, into a company. It's your dream, it's your vision. And for Linda, and she probably wouldn't say this, but did the same thing. So being a board member was awful because we didn't pay her. I mean, she really started this from her heart and her mind and her soul, knowing that this need was so important to our community. So fundraising for HSI is an ongoing, we look for grants, we look for foundation support to support Linda and our operations. And that 10% certainly is a big part of it. But I just want everyone to know that this really started truly as an entrepreneurial program and effort, and has come to this point. And now we're able to pay her a little bit. We don't even pay her near what she's worth. So she has the same heart and mind as everyone in the room.
Well, thanks, Diane. And actually we've experienced the growth pains of many young nonprofits, which just really drives us more to do what we want to do. So, if you picture somebody sitting on their porch in their neighborhood and they're looking around and they're saying, I could really do something great for my neighborhood, but then the barriers to like if they don't have the financial resources and the support, like I've had support from my family to encourage me to continue on. But if you haven't had that, or you don't have the means or the access to that, the nonprofit world is basically inaccessible to you. And so that drives us really to be able to serve those people. It's very difficult to find funding, or almost impossible to find funding for a startup nonprofit, right? There's a popular nonprofit blogger, Vu Le. He has a blog called Nonprofit AF, right? And so he says, when you want to start a nonprofit, you're chased out of the community with pitchforks and torches. Well, and that's his humorous way of saying it, but why is that? It's because there are already a lot of nonprofits. Funding is stretched, and many of the services are duplicative. Well, that's okay. Maybe that founder that's sitting on his porch doesn't need to start a nonprofit. Maybe he can just slide that underneath our umbrella and do what he loves to do. For example, we had a person who was a fourth grade teacher who always had a dream of doing this charitable program. She wanted to start a nonprofit. Well, we just slid her program into our organization as a comprehensive fiscal sponsor, as a comprehensive program. And she conducted it for a while and then realized that, hey, this nonprofit thing, like I'm spending a lot of time raising money, and all I really want to do is my program. I don't think this is for me. But you know what? She could then, that program could go away, and she could continue on in her life, knowing that these were the realities of the nonprofit world, without having overbuilt and created a structure that she then had to legally dissolve with lawyers and a huge expense to her.
Thank you for that. A question from Sam. Would you review what capacity building means again?
Sure. So many nonprofit organizations have holes in their, and I'm sure for-profit organizations do too, but they have holes in their procedures and processes that keep them from completely fulfilling their mission. In other words, it depletes their capacity to perform their mission. So capacity building is building up those organizations, kind of plugging those holes in their knowledge, in their processes and procedures, to enable them to fully complete their mission.
Thank you.
Garish has a question. What are some criteria you use to take on a nonprofit under your umbrella?
Okay, well, that is a great question, Girish. So first of all, we want to see that, and most important, we want to see that the program's mission aligns with ours. So if it's not an organization that is demonstrating some benefit to humanity, it's not in alignment with our mission to serve nonprofit organizations and humanity. So that's the first thing. Secondly, we always ask for a founder resume to be sure that the founder has, in our estimation, the internal ability and the background to be able to follow through with what they say they want to do, right? So do they have the background knowledge for that? And then finally, and probably the most critical next to mission alignment, would be the amount of risk that it brings into our organization. Under the Model A sponsorship, when that program comes comprehensively into our organization, we as an organization bear all the risk for that, for the operation of that organization, which is nice for the organization because they don't have to, that program doesn't need to buy insurance. Our insurance covers their activities. It's a huge benefit for the program. But if they're bringing along with that some risk exposure for our organization that would threaten us financially, or even worse, would threaten our 501c3 status, then we would have to say either no outright, or if you can correct these areas of exposure in some way, then we can talk about a fiscal sponsorship. And we do try to provide a path back for those organizations, but it's not always possible. Okay, so I see another question in the chat. Some stories about nonprofits you have helped. Oh, these are my favorite. I could go on and on. So I think one of my favorite organizations that we're working with right now has come on all the way up through, the initial consulting, hey, I have an idea, to the comprehensively sponsored organization, to now the standalone entity. And it's both a local, well, actually all three, it's a local, national, and international nonprofit. So this organization I'd like to tell you about is Mountain Bike Afghanistan. And a couple of years ago, maybe 3 years ago, the gentleman who owns our building introduced me to a young man named Farid, who loved mountain biking. He competed in mountain biking in college in Vermont, and he was from Afghanistan. And his dream was to open up the beautiful world of the outdoors to the Afghan culture. As you know, when you hear the word Afghanistan, you think of war. And actually, when we brought this, and I think maybe Anthony Durante was on the program committee when this one came in, and our risk management guy said, hey, Linda, those are three words I never want to hear together at one time: mountain, bike, and Afghanistan. Don't ever say those to me all together. But we met at Alexandra's there on 4th Street. We had breakfast with Farid, and we started him up as a comprehensive program. It would be multifaceted. He'd be training for the Olympics. He'd be growing a mountain bike team in Afghanistan, and he would be advocating for social change, things that would allow women to ride bikes in Afghanistan because that was not allowed, and also to bring a positive impression of Afghanistan back to the world. It's a beautiful country. It really is. So now he went through the comprehensive program. Now he's a standalone. We formed him as his own incorporated nonprofit. He doesn't have his 501c3 yet, so he's in the Model C relationship with us. But he's been just tearing it up, making relationships. He actually met some folks from the Walton Foundation. He earned a full ride MBA to the Walton School of Business, and he's down there training in the Ozarks. He's got there's Mountain Bike Afghanistan sponsors an annual bike race in Afghanistan. And something that I'm personally most excited about, they have made leaps and bounds in giving access to biking to young women in Afghanistan. There's a young woman named Afsana, who's an excellent biker, but she was hit by a truck while she was out biking. The jury is out on whether that was purposeful or not. She usually has to ride with men with her to protect her from people who would throw rocks at her and insult her and try to knock her off her bike. But her bike was ruined. So Mountain Bike Afghanistan sent her a brand new bike and a brand new specialty bike. And she continued her training. And they also got her a scholarship to a college here in the US so she can train for the Olympics here in the US. And one of the other things that happened was that her being present on her bike out on the street caused other women to join her. And now they can ride together, and so they're breaking down these cultural barriers. And, even though all we did was sit behind our computers and support that, we can still feel a part of that from what we did here in our little office in South Bethlehem, right? And so I love that. I love that story, that program. I could go on and on about our programs. I think we have some program managers here with us today also. So they're just all really amazing people.
That's an awesome story. That's beautiful. I love that. Question from George. How do the boards and committees work, or nonprofits under your umbrella? Do they have any? Is that something HSI handles?
So it depends on which model of fiscal sponsorship that we're practicing with that program. If we're doing the Model A fiscal sponsorship, George, they don't have to have a board of directors because they're part and parcel of our organization. So technically, our board is their board. However, that founder, that program manager, is the subject matter expert for their program. So what we recommend and encourage is that they pull around themselves an advisory board. That would be many of the same kinds of people you would pull into a board of directors, but we recommend they have regular meetings with their advisory board and make sure that they understand the difference between the advisory board and a board of directors. Now, for the Model C organizations, they are standalone nonprofits. Now, they don't have to be nonprofit organizations. Some fiscal sponsors will conduct Model C fiscal sponsorships with LLCs, corporations, individuals. We do not. We like our Model C programs to be incorporated nonprofits. And then as an incorporated nonprofit, they have a responsibility to have their own board of directors that's separate from ours.
Thank you for that. And Stacy asks, how many nonprofits and social entrepreneurs are you currently serving? And what are some example areas of these organizations that you're helping?
So right now we have 33 programs. We're onboarding 6. We have been keeping our numbers between 30 and 40 for probably the last 2 years, because that's what I could manage myself. We've recently hired a finance officer and a communications professional to assist with some of those things so that now we can grow. So we're really ready to hit growth phase. That's not your question, but that's how many we're serving right now. So let me give you some examples from the Lehigh Valley. That might be the best for this situation. Some that you might know. So Allentown United Football Club, that's one of our programs. Allentown Young Professionals, Louis Holtzman and some other professionals from the Allentown area wanted to have a different kind of young professionals organization, one that had a social mission as well, social impact mission as well. So Allentown Young Professionals. Bethlehem Women of Excellence, a beautiful young lady, Enid, has put a Christmas party together for the impoverished families of South Bethlehem for many, many years. She's a Model C organization. She doesn't have her 501c3, but operates under our umbrella. We're really proud of Enid and all the good work that she does. You had on here a little while ago, Brianna Cropley with Cupcats Cafe. She's one of our fiscally sponsored programs. One of our new programs in the Lehigh Valley that I'm super excited about, going to be the next like mountain bike Afghanistan that I'm really excited about, is Afros in Nature. And they were recently profiled in Lehigh Valley Style, the magazine. And then, this is something that was near and dear to the founder's heart. She grew up in an area in the Dominican Republic where she loved the outdoors. And when she came here to Allentown, she was not able to go out and enjoy the outdoors because it wasn't safe for people of color to do that, which was not something that was really on my radar, but when I heard her story, I'm like, man, we have to fix that, right? And so Afros in Nature, their goal is to make the outdoors and a sustainable, healthy lifestyle accessible to biracial, indigenous, and people of color. So they're a startup that I'm super excited about here in the Lehigh Valley. So we also have some organizations like Mountain Bike Afghanistan that operate here in the that are formed here in the U.S. but operate globally. So one of those is Pillars of Health, and that organization is based in Pittsburgh but operates in Rwanda, and they perform an essential service by purchasing, for what is a small price for us, health insurance for people in Rwanda who have type 1 diabetes. And so this has a ripple effect through their families and their communities, a positive ripple effect through their families and their communities. But again, there was a person, the founder there didn't want to start an entire nonprofit. He just wanted to do this good thing, right? So this is a perfect structure for that.
Is there anyone that has a question that feels more comfortable asking the question on audio rather than going ahead and printing it out, texting it?
I have another question, if that's
Go
okay.
ahead,
Oh,
Stacy.
hi, Stacy.
Hi. So when an organization comes to you and says, "Hey, I have this idea, I want to get something started," and maybe there is no answer, maybe it varies greatly, but what is kind of the lead time between when they contact you and start talking to you, they have this idea, to when they can actually start going out in the community and then making a difference and helping people?
Well, it does depend, and very much on the person who has the idea. So, as you might suspect, a lot of people have the ideas for things they want to do, but don't have the personal capacity to follow through on those. So those types of situations, we'll say, okay, 6 months of consulting, and let's see where you go with it, right? And so if it's a brand new idea and it's kind of incubating with us for 6 months, if it doesn't go anywhere and the person isn't like responding to emails and things like that or following through, then it's just not going to go anywhere. And it happens. And, sadly, some people who are like that actually persevere and form nonprofit organizations, and then they really don't have the capacity to do that. But generally, when a person comes to us through the application process, within a month or two, we can have them out on the street raising money and doing good in the way that they want to. That is the vast majority of organizations. And then on the other side of the bell curve, you have the real go-getter that hits us at just right time in the application cycle. They come to us, they get the application in, the next week is the program committee meeting, boom, they're approved, the next week's 2 weeks and they're out on the street. So it does kind of depend, and we have all elements of the bell curve there. The most common is, about 2 months or so.
Linda, do you have your information in the chat area?
I do.
Okay.
I'm also still trying to share that PDF. I didn't ever really do that. So let's see, maybe Tony, I wonder if I can email that to you to share. And I'd like you to have that because it does describe our kind of our ancillary services that would be available to local nonprofits. I mean, I know that a lot of you probably know nonprofits that have needs, so I'd really like to provide that to you here. So let me see if I can email it to Tony. For some reason, it's not letting me. I can't. All right.
And I did have a general question, if I could ask.
Sure.
When you're ready. This is Hector Benet. I work for the Eastern Area School District. If I can just get an idea of minimal size and if there's a recommended age range for this, where we might have some students who might be interested in doing certain things at the high school level or even younger. Um, and I just have an idea of like, what's your like smallest entity that you've worked with?
Yeah, well, I have a really special place in my heart for high school entrepreneurs, social entrepreneurs. From my days as a high school administrator, I love working with students. So there really is not a minimal age per se. However, we do need to sign a contract with an adult. So there has to be a responsible adult to enter into that contractual relationship with us. And in general, we're happy to work with students of any age. We've worked with some Lehigh students, but never undergrad students. So I mean, I think as long as they have an idea that's worth developing, we're happy to do that. Now, where we run into a little bit of disconnect with our final mission is that a lot of times students will want to start an organization, but then as they get older, they realize that this isn't what they want to do with their life. So more so with projects, charitable projects, rather than charitable organizations, if I could make that distinction. So for example, let's just say that you had a team of students who wanted to conduct a charitable project to assist a local, let's say, homeless shelter, right? And they wanted to form that into a program, and they wanted to park it under our nonprofit corporate structure and operate as a nonprofit. We could do that. And then when the project is over, then the program dissolves, right? As long as we have somebody 18 or over to enter into that contractual relationship with us. What we wouldn't want to do per se is say, okay, we're going to start an organization that does this continually, right? Because the reality is that once they graduate or go on to college and disperse, that's going to fall by the wayside. And that's kind of what we've seen with students. And it's just kind of a matter of progressing different seasons of their life.
Thank you.
But maybe we can talk about that, because that might be something interesting that we might be able to do together with the Easton School District. That's a really interesting idea.
Yeah, it's the sort of thing where you have the one track of students who are looking to bolster and burnish the resume when they
Mhm.
apply for colleges, right? So it looks great if they've done something in a charitable, effort where they're the leader, they organize it, and they actually have an end product. And as you say, it might be a project to a given homeless shelter or raise money for a larger nonprofit, right? And then kind of do small organization and do that. And there's some others that I'm interested in making sure they understand this is a career pathway.
Right.
And if you're interested in the nonprofit world, you want to do good in the world. Well, guess what? There are actually careers where you do that full time, working for organizations. And it isn't necessarily something that you see on some of these career planning um, programs that we have, where they're more traditional. And unless the kid's aware of it, they don't follow that interest pathway.
Right.
So it's definitely something I've asked for the information here, and I'll be making a list and I'll be reaching out.
Oh, that's great. Okay, great.
Thank you for that. Al, you had a question? You had your hand up?
There we go. Can you hear me?
Yes, now we can.
Great. I have a new microphone. It sort of touches on what Anthony was saying. I was thinking you could partner with one of the schools, local schools, and almost have a course or an internship project where students would learn the nuts and bolts about how to start nonprofits, and they'd actually maybe partner with some nonprofit that you have already and be some extra manpower for them, free manpower. So have you thought about something like that?
Yes, actually, we ran a pilot last summer of a regional internship team, and my then board president liked the structure so much that he applied it to Lehigh's summer internships. So what we did is we trained the interns, and then we solicited projects from the nonprofit sector. Things like fundraising, virtual fundraising, marketing, and so on, things like that. So we've thought about it. We've run a pilot of it. What I've realized through the pilot is that I need to have a point person to run that program because it's time intensive to coach and mentor the interns through that process and manage all the projects. So we did have that last summer, but if we would not have had that, it would not have been a successful program. So because we had that person, it was a successful program. But so that was at the college level. We haven't done anything like that at the high school level. But if we have that person, the right person in that spot and the funding for that person, then that would be definitely doable, I would think.
How much time a week would that person spend managing this program?
The person we had on last summer spent about 20 hours a week mentoring the students and training.
Okay.
Anyone else before we get into announcements? Linda, we would like to thank you.
Girish is muted. 1 second.
We'd like to thank you for presenting today. We always ask this question at the end of the presentation. How can we help you?
Well, I was ready for that a little bit. So we always need good board members. So board members who identify with our mission and are absorbed and consumed with that mission. So we always need good board members and people who understand the nonprofit sector and maybe have some experience in the nonprofit sector, because we are very creative and innovative there. So it's important to have a very good grasp of the sector. And then contacts and referrals. As I'm looking at the Hollywood squares of all our friends and acquaintances here, I'm sure that you have people that you've been thinking of or organizations that you've been thinking of as you've been listening to our words, that if we can make contact with those organizations and serve them so that they can do their mission better, that would be ideal. Because it's a multiplying business model, right? So we're serving the people who are serving the people, and that ripple effect out into the community. And we're ready to grow. We're ready to take on more programs. So if you know people who have ideas, who would like to start up, or if you know nonprofit organizations that are struggling in some way and could use some of those back office services, I'm hoping that we can send that PDF out with the recording at the end, and I'll connect with you, Tony, to make sure that we can do that. But we have services we can provide for those organizations, and even if they have deeper needs and need some kind of fiscal sponsorship, temporary or permanent, we can work that out too. So any of those types of referrals would be great. A good referral is ask the person if I can contact them and get their contact information to me, and I will reach out and contact that person.
As a former board member on Linda's, it's a very rewarding experience. I spent, I guess, about 2.5 years on the board with Linda, and I enjoyed it immensely. My life got a little bit too busy to finish my term and to continue on, but I think if you're looking for a board of a nonprofit to be on, I think Linda's is a great organization to be part of.
I have a suggestion, Linda.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing with us your mission. But there are some misconceptions around nonprofits, and perhaps it may be appropriate to have a talk or a workshop, or invite local business potential owners, small business owners who are thinking in that line, and kind of separate the facts from the myths of nonprofit as a path to business ownership. A lot of people think that nonprofit means, okay, I don't have to pay any taxes. I can just carry on and make a ton of money. And just one example, but perhaps something that will shed light on this aspect of a business legal entity.
That's a really great suggestion, Girish, and thanks for that. Um, the other thing I suspect, and as small business owners, you can potentially verify this for me, but I suspect that many business owners who have a desire to give back to their community, but don't necessarily know how they might structure that or do that with relationship to their for-profit entity. So that's another thing that we can help with, right? So they can just form that project, put it under our umbrella, and they can conduct that charitable work within their community. And I'm sure that a lot of the 1 Million Cups entrepreneurs have that desire within them. Like I said, I've found that people are generally good and want to serve and help their communities.
Thank you.
Mhm.
We'll be in touch.
Oh, thank you, Girish.